Hey, Mandy.
Hi, how are
It's,
you?
I'm good. I was just thinking, isn't it interesting? We always chat for a few minutes before we actually start the podcast, right?
I know,
And
and I feel like my voice changes
yeah,
almost instantly.
yeah. It's like, hi, Mandy. Hi, Lisa. Well, let's just say hi because we say that really because
I know,
our, our audience is joining us as well. So we're doing the polite thing. Hey, Mandy. Hey,
I
Lisa.
know. Hey, welcome
Hey,
everybody.
welcome everyone. Lovely to have you again listening in to us.
I
So,
know.
what's our topic for today?
So today I sent you a list, and I think we're pretty eager to talk about psychological safety. And this has been coming up for me for a while now. And it shows up in different ways. And it's funny because there's so many euphemisms for it. I
Hmm.
think people talk about it, but they don't quite say psychological safety. So,
Right. Yes.
in our true form, I want you to tell us exactly what it is and what that means. And, I've got some ways I can share that it's been brought up lately because it's been, I mean, I guess it's always been there, but
Yeah.
definitely been relevant now as we all know we're seeing things that we do need to talk about.
Yes.
Very important things to talk about in the office and how we even go about it.
Yeah. It's coming up a lot in my work, literally on a daily basis. Yesterday, I spent hours with a leader who had just gotten back her team assessment, how the team is doing. And she was on the verge of tears. And this is a strong, competent woman, but she is so, no, I shouldn't say but, and she is so committed to team development. That's why she felt it so much. That's why when she saw that some of her people were afraid to speak up, that some of her people didn't trust that they could share concerns, it was like, so I said, good, we have the data and we have your high level of motivation and commitment for change. So that's valuable resources we now have to decide how we're going to move forward. So before you and I talk about, what the experts or people like myself and researchers will look at this, how we talk about and think about psychological safety, tell me, what are you hearing and what's your thinking around psychological safety? What does it mean for you and what does it look like? When you have it, what does it look like? When the environment has it, what does it look like? But when it's not there, what does it look like?
So I recently took an assessment because I saw it on LinkedIn, something popped up, and I said, ooh, that looks interesting. And it measures your psychological safety at work, how you perceive it.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some things in there that I was surprised about. So I initially thought it's how comfortable people feel expressing their opinions, giving feedback, expressing criticism, upwards, and
Yeah.
sideways and downwards. But one thing in there, and of course knew that it was about inclusion and do people feel like they can
Yes.
show up as themselves. But I was
Mm-hmm.
very surprised to read, and I should have known this, that there was something that measured, are you willing to take risks? Are you comfortable making mistakes? What
Mm-hmm.
happens if you make a
Yeah.
mistake and
Yeah.
take a risk that doesn't work?
Yeah.
And I immediately, you know how I am,
Mm-hmm.
I'm very risk averse because I have that fear of making mistakes. Definitely something I'm working on. And then I thought, oh my gosh, my team probably feels this as well because
Yeah.
that's what I'm emitting.
Yeah.
Is it okay to try something new and fail?
Yes.
And is it
Can
okay
we
to bring
pause,
up a
Mandy?
new idea?
Can we
Go
pause
ahead.
on this for a moment and reframe something important that you just said? You said that I'm risk averse and my team knows that I'm risk averse. And then you followed up by saying, and I'm working on it. You see that? So the second part is so powerful because you're doing the work. So,
Yeah.
one way to help you with that is actually to reframe that whole thinking and the way you're languaging this. Rather than saying I'm risk averse, we could reframe that to say I'm working on being more comfortable with taking risks, right? One person may
Yeah.
say being less risk averse. I like to go the positive. I'm working on being more comfortable with taking risks. So even when you say that with your team, they feel you going on that journey rather than I am risk averse, because it's almost like you're owning that. And so then
Yeah.
there's this tension, this struggle with I am risk averse and I'm trying to be less. I'm working on being more comfortable with taking risks. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. For
because
sure.
that supports you in creating a more psychologically safe place for you and the people that you work with.
Yeah. Well, and one of my employees, I call her the yin to my yang
Mm,
because she she loves to take risks and she pushes me and she will call me out for saying, "Oh, it's okay. This is going to be
yes.
okay." And I do feel as far as that psychological safety, we have that relationship. I think she can
Mhm.
tell me and be honest. And but I know I don't have that with everyone on my team.
Yes.
I know I
Yes.
have that with her. And so cultivating and I actually want my team to take this assessment
Hmm.
so that we can talk about it and even
Hmm.
just say, here's where I'm at,
Yeah.
here's where I see everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty powerful. You know, when I think about psychological safety, I'm thinking about it in not just the work environment, but in our homes, in our families, in whatever communities that we're a part of, wherever you have two or more people gathered, there's a need for us to feel psychologically safe so that we can, in the workplace, for example, we're there to produce. That's why they hire us. We're there to produce. And part of producing, we have to sometimes quite often be creative, be innovative, engage with others. And when we're not experiencing high levels of psychological safety, it's hard for us to be innovative and creative. So it impacts our level of productivity. So that's true whether we're in the workplace or we're in our families, or you're even working with coaching a soccer team, for example. A coach is the leader of the soccer team, right? And I see leaders as being the ones primarily responsible for managing and maintaining the climatic conditions of the team. So whether that team is the family or the soccer team or the marketing team at your office, the leader has the primary responsibility for ensuring the climate of the team is healthy, that it allows folks to do a lot of the things that you're talking about, take risk, show up and ask questions that others wouldn't ask, that they can, you know, embrace the friction that comes with us exposing ourselves in that way. Because that's part of what we run away from, that, if we ask certain questions, it's going to rub others the wrong way. So we're afraid of the social and the intellectual friction that that may cause. Interestingly enough, innovation calls for that,
Yeah.
right? Think
Yeah.
about it. Think about it. Innovation is boosted by all of us coming to the table with our differences, or different cultures, or different backgrounds, or different education and experience, or different ways of speaking, or different accents. You're on a team and sometimes somebody says something, you're like, what did she say? I didn't hear that. But how we say that can either support and encourage that person to speak up or cause them to not want to speak up, because the way we responded to not hearing may make that person feel like, oh my gosh, they can't even understand me. So what's the point in even trying, right?
Yeah.
Imagine how that impacts innovation. Imagine that person on the team who, say, it's somebody from uh, what area in Texas would folks have the thickest accent that's hardest to understand?
Oh, I have friends from Beaumont.
From Beaumont, okay?
Beaumont, and they've got that twang.
That might
My
be hard to.
mom has one that I think she just made up, but she's got a thick accent.
Your mom made up an accent.
I don't know. She just has a very thick accent, but she's from Austin, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
So are there times when your mom would say something, or your friends from Beaumont would say something that they may have to repeat, or someone might say, oh, didn't understand that too well? I mean, coming from Jamaica is a similar thing, depending on where you are from on the island, different parishes that maybe only a couple hours away, but the accent sounds different. Now, when we come to the US or go to another country, we all sound the same. like Jamaicans with a thick accent, and others may not understand us readily. And so, for example, coming to school in the US or starting a job here, that's a challenge for someone to get over. And how others in a team or in your class responds to you, it either enhances your sense of safety or it reduces your sense of safety and the likelihood that you're going to share and want to feel comfortable taking risks, because sharing then becomes a risk because you
Yeah.
might be sidelined or embarrassed because of what you say and how you say, right? Yet again, I take it right back to leaders are the ones responsible for creating this environment so folks can feel comfortable to speak up. So whether it's the teacher, the coach, or the leader of the team in the organization, they've got a responsibility to make sure that folks can speak up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Many organizations, interestingly enough, they spend a lot of time and resources boosting, giving folks little fringe benefits. So whether it's free food or resources for the gym or a beautiful office environment, I love all of those. I love for the leaders and teams I work with to have all those things. Yet we know from research and from anecdotal evidence that those things do not contribute to psychological safety. They're nice to have, but they don't,
Yeah.
right? It's the
Yeah.
more social and cultural intelligence that's going to enhance how we feel in the workplace.
Yeah. And I'll tell you something that I've struggled with as moving from, a supportive role to a leadership role
Mm-hmm.
is, and you know this, I typically joke a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I I make a lot of jokes. I use it as a way to form relationships with people. I use it
Yes.
to help people feel comfortable. But what I've learned is that not all jokes land
Yes.
and not all jokes are funny to all.
Yes.
And something that I think is silly or harmless can
Yes.
sometimes offend somebody else. And that's been a hard lesson for me to learn is that
Mhm.
when that happens, I mean, I can pretty much see when someone shuts down and
Yeah.
is like, oh, that was too far, and it's mostly because I'm watching, but I've had to learn that the hard way. Or when I've had people say, I think you took that a little too far,
Yeah.
afterwards. And so in my effort to make people feel comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
it actually has backfired. And I've had to really, think about how I communicate or be silly or try and lighten a mood if
Mm-hmm.
things
Mm-hmm.
get stressful.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing you say underneath that, though, Mandy, is you have heightened your sense of awareness,
Hmm.
awareness of yourself, how you're thinking and behaving, what you're putting out there, awareness of the environment and the people in the environment. So, certain jokes, for example, you won't put those out for certain audience because you know that it's not going to land the right way. It's like my kids can be very sarcastic, both of them, Matt and Chrissy, and I don't have very strong sarcastic bones. I have tried to be sarcastic and it does not work. And so they'll say things and I'm getting it like way later. And it's like, oh my gosh, mom, she just doesn't, right? And so you might find a similar thing where your sense of humor is a way to lighten the environment, it's a way to connect with folks, but it might be in a way that others, it might be hurtful, might be embarrassing, might be dismissive.
Yeah.
But the fact that you are thinking about it, that awareness is key, because what's going to help us improve psychological safety in any of our environments, work or family or elsewhere, it's our emotional intelligence and our cultural intelligence. The fact that we are leaning in to be more aware of ourselves, to notice how we're showing up and how the way we are showing up impacts the environment around us and impacts others, right? So we now get to be aware of when things we do and say may elicit fear in others, where at the heart of a lack of psychological safety really is fear,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Fear of what? Maybe not being seen, not being
Being
heard,
judged.
being judged, right? Not appreciated. And I say to all my leaders, listen, When fear reigns in your organization, that's a sign of leadership failure. And that's that I felt that viscerally even saying that, but I have to be open and honest with my leaders, because one of the things I want most is to see them grow and thrive. So we called it as it is. To say, one leader said to me recently, "Holy crap, are you serious?" And I'm like, yeah, when you, because we were, again, this is another leader, we're looking at the annual feedback from his team, and fear and mistrust was just running through a lot of the data points that we're looking at. And his initial response was to, "But I've done a lot of stuff." And I said, I know you've done a ton of stuff, but we've been going through some tough conditions over the last year and a half or so. And so people in our circles need more from us, and we need more from ourselves, and we need more from them. And so all this is saying is that they're needing more from you. So you and I have more work to do, right? So as the leader, your responsibility now is to figure out, how do I work with my team to manage that fear so that we can improve psychological safety on the team. And so, I love the work of Timothy Clark looking at psychological safety, his research around that. And he's looked at invited us to look at 4 areas that we need to pay attention to when we're thinking about psychological safety, to ensure that we're being comprehensive in our understanding of psychological safety. Um, so makes me ask the question, what do people really want? And Timothy says people really want, they want to be included. That's number one, right? At work or at home or in the club or at school, they want to be included. Second, they want to learn and grow, right? And I always say to my leaders, listen, one of your primary responsibility is to ensure that your people on your team are learning and growing. Quite often, productivity tends to be number one, but I invite them to flip that around, to say, listen, when your people feel safe and they're learning and growing, oh my gosh, productivity is like icing on the cake, right? So people want to learn and grow. And third, guess what? They want to contribute. So even the very quiet, shy person on the team who appears like he or she has nothing to say or don't want to contribute, they really want to. They're probably trying to figure out how best to do this, right? Without feeling like they're not smart enough or whatever. They want to do that. And then fourth is, can we challenge the status quo when things don't seem right? When we believe things need to change, right? Right? So the 4 things are, we want to be included, we want to learn and grow, we want to contribute, and we need to challenge the status quo when things are not working well. And a lot of the team feedback that my leaders have been getting show that in many of these areas, the numbers aren't where they need to be. And that spells or indicates psychological safety not being where it needs to be. When that is the case, or engagement goes down because we're not showing up fully, right? We're not showing up fully at all. So engagement goes down, creativity goes down, productivity goes down. And then we run the risk of people saying, you know what? This is a place that I don't want to be in anymore. It's a family. We hear folks say, I am not going to Thanksgiving with my family again. Why? They don't feel psychologically safe. It's
Yep.
not a safe place to be. They can't speak up. They can't share exactly how they feel about stuff, right? Or political and socioeconomic issues and turmoil that's been happening. This caused a lot of families to say, I don't feel safe going to my family for this gathering or whatever. In a similar way, in the workplace, folks will say, you know what? I don't know. There's something about this culture. There's something about this team that and generally it's about how safe they feel. Are they
Yeah.
growing? Are they learning? Can they take risks? Can they speak up when something isn't going well?
And I've seen this, especially personally speaking. I know when I'm in that place when I think, oh, it's just not even worth it to get into it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be in that place. I've
Yeah.
always told my director, and he will tell you this, like, when you're not hearing from me, that means that I've given up. That means that I've thrown in the towel and I'm tired, and I don't my level of engagement is not there anymore.
Yeah.
Because I typically come to him with all my ideas and all, oh, this is what I'm thinking, and I wasn't happy that you said this. I said, when you stop hearing from me, that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
And I see that too as the leader of my team. You know, when it's quiet, that's not that scares me when it's super quiet.
Well, that's a robust data point, right? It's what you make of that data point. When he's not hearing from you, that's a data point that says, I need to be hearing from Mandy because something is going on. She's disengaged. What's feeding that disengagement? Because when you're disengaged from him or from work, 9 times out of 10, you're also a bit disengaged from your team,
Yeah.
right? Right? That's just, yeah. Yeah. When Peter and I have an argument, I don't want to be hunky dory with him and cozy cozy. I'm pulling back because I'm bruised, right?
Yeah.
I don't feel like talking to you. I don't want to engage. I don't care how much you love me and climb the mountains for me. I don't want to hear that right now. Right? And the truth is, quite often, that's the very time that we need to be moving toward, but we need to take a moment sometime to sort of soothe whatever that wound is that we're feeling and think about how we want to approach. But when you
Yeah.
disengage, you're giving your manager some information about where you are and how safe you're feeling.
So how do you, well, I have two questions. You know, how do you cultivate that culture of psychological safety as a
Mm-hmm.
leader?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes I feel like I'm pushing it upwards. You know,
Yeah.
I'm pushing it to say, you need to learn how to make people feel psychologically safe here. You know,
Yes.
I'm pushing it.
Yeah.
So, you know, how do you cultivate it? And then I also wanted to ask you about how do you set the stage for really difficult conversations
Mm-hmm.
that you know are about to happen?
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether it's about DEI initiatives, which have been very touchy for a lot of organizations, coming back to the office.
Yeah.
So, first question, you know, how do you cultivate that? I'm hearing you say it has to be from the top down.
Yeah, yeah. The leaders manage the climate of the organization. But first, let's talk about what it's not, what psychological
Okay.
safety is not. Because some folk get the impression that it means that things are hunky dory and we're humming along. And I say, no, that is nonsense. Because guess what? We come to the table with differences, and our differences matter, and our differences cause conflict. They cause us to rub up against each other. So, it's psychological safety. It's not about being nice. It's not about an absence of conflict at all. It's psychological safety is not about giving us space to whine and complain about what's going on and what we're getting and what we're not getting. It doesn't mean that everything you say will be applauded. It just means that you have the space to freely say what you need to say without repercussion, right? Um, Psychological safety does not give us permission to just slack off and do what we please or whatever. It does not. It's also not about just vomiting all over your team about what you're feeling and what you're going through. And so it's not about oversharing, which some folks feel that if we have psychological safety, then I can just come and talk about whatever is going on. No, not exactly, because the timing has to be right for you to share in that way, right? So the goal of psychological safety, it has to enhance the mission and the purpose of the team. What are we here to do? Which is why I always go back to the leader and say, what are you and your team here to do? Right? You have a business goal, right? A mission and a business goal. You're also here to ensure the growth and development and well-being of your people. So that's what psychological safety is all about: is ensure that you can produce and that folks can feel safe and they can grow in that environment. The leader's responsibility then is to show up in a way that banishes fear, which is at the heart of all of this, so that we all can do what it is that we need to do. I mentioned Timothy Clark earlier because I really appreciate the work that he's done around this. And he challenges us with 4 questions that we need to ask ourselves as we begin to think about creating a more psychologically safe place, whether, again, at home, school, work, wherever. First, he says, and I'm quoting him here. First, do you truly believe that all men and women are created equal? And do you accept others and welcome them into your society simply because they possess flesh and blood, even if their values differ from your own? So think about all the folks on your team. I say that to my leaders. Think about all of them, their background, what they bring. Are they all equal? Or, as they say in the book Animal Farm, are some more equal than others? And if we have that, then we're going to create an environment where it's not just about the work we do and can we produce at the level that's required. It means we're throwing a lot of other stuff in our assessment of a person's worth on the team. So notice first, we got to kind of settle down in ourselves and ask something like, that's a tough question to ask and to answer really, really honestly.
Yeah.
Really, really honestly, right? Second is, without bias or discrimination, do you encourage others to learn and grow? And do you support them in that process, even when they lack the confidence or make mistakes? I can tell you this is a tough one for many of my leaders who are drivers. They are go-getters. They're like, let's make things happen. And then you have a few members on their team who it takes them longer for their engines to rev. And they may drop the ball and fumble several times before they really get it. But this leader needs to, everything has to go and go fast. And so the way they think about and respond to these team members, it's quite different from the way they respond to others. So Timothy challenges us with a question like that. And third is, do you grant others maximum autonomy to contribute in their own way as they demonstrate their ability to deliver results? Or do they have to do it the way we do it or the way the team has always done it?
Oh.
Ugh. As a team leader, I'm seeing your engines rolling in your head, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is all gold for me because these, I almost want to print these out and look at them for the next week. You know what I mean? And look at them, and because like you just said, I am a driver. I am a fast driver. And not everyone is, and that's okay.
And not everyone should.
And not everyone should. You're right. Not everyone should. Everyone drives at different speeds, drives different cars. Some don't even drive, they ride bikes, you know,
some walk.
so,
Some
or
walk.
they walk, and that is, yes. Yeah. So this is, yeah.
Yeah. So you see how powerful these questions are for us as individuals, that we first have to examine ourselves before we start to say, how are we going to shift things in the environment? And so the fourth question that he challenges us with is, do you consistently invite others to challenge the status quo in order to make things better? And are you personally prepared to be wrong based on the humility and learning mindset you have developed? Ooh.
Maybe.
Yeah. I love the honesty. I love the honesty, right? So remember, we started talking about the fear that we all experience, that team members experience, that family members experience, which prevents them from showing up. When we think about the team, the fear that gets in the way of asking questions, of exploring, of gaining clarity, and team members, moving forward on a task without having full clarity, because they don't want to ask stupid questions, quote unquote, stupid questions, when it's a questions to clarify. But they're thinking, I won't look as smart if I ask those questions, right? And how does that impact innovation? How does that impact the bottom line? How does that impact turnover? This actually is one of the top things feeding high turnover rates. Right now, turnover rate is over 50% for most organizations.
Yeah, they're calling it the Great Resignation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just read about stats for marketing. Go ahead,
yeah.
Because, I'm on a marketing team, and I just read stats and shared it with my leadership team, and it's, I mean, it's real.
It is real. It is real.
And, you know, also something that I see this having a huge effect on is our ability to be flexible and to change at the pace we're being asked to right now. You
Right.
know, we had COVID, then so we flipped to remote. Now we're flipping back. Oh, wait, we might be flipping back to remote because
Mhm.
of the variant. You know, and with in my industry where live events were in-person events were a huge deal, that innovation is needed. What do
Oh,
we do now?
absolutely. Absolutely. And if all your team members are figuratively curled up in a corner, taking care of the bruises they feel because of how things are managed on the team, that takes away from their ability to be creative and to innovate,
Yeah.
right? So the way leaders, the way we answer all these questions that I just asked, indicates the value we place on individuals and on relationships. Because the work that most of us do, it's done all through relationships. Even the person who is the individual contributor, their work impacts and is impacted by so many other individuals and teams that it's all about the relationships.
Yeah.
So
It's
answering these questions for us, it'll tell us whether we open folks up, we shut them down, we build fear, we reduce fear, we encourage or we discourage, we support growth or we inhibit growth. I had a leader said to me recently, as she was reviewing some of the stuff, and she said, Lisa, I've always believed and acted as if one of my primary responsibility is to remove obstacles for my people. And what I'm hearing from some of the feedback I've gotten is that I have become one of those obstacles.
uh,
That was a profound realization.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So are you as a leader, am I as a leader, being an obstacle to others and to their growth, to their productivity, their ability to live or to lead beyond their limits because of the way I engage with others?
Yeah. And you know, there is no one size fits all
No.
for how you engage with each person.
Mm-mm.
So add on that trickiness and
Yeah.
you know, it's yeah, that's just something I want to ruminate on the rest of today, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if we were to just isolate one incident, let's say a team member shared a perspective and the team or the leader or whatever, they shut it down. Imagine how that, and say, let's say it's a team member who often doesn't share, but they've been thinking about this, whatever the situation is, and decided you're going to take a risk and share. And they were shut down, talked over, or kind of dismissed. Imagine how that team member feels.
Well, and imagine if it was a really great idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just complete loss.
Mm-hmm. So,
Loss of a relationship and
oh,
a loss of innovation and
performance and yeah, ability to thrive and to create value and to add value, that's compromised when these things happen. So let's talk quickly about some ways that we can address this. And this is a much deeper topic than you and I can do in this brief conversation. But notice we have those four areas that we talked about when we talked about psychological safety. We said, it's about wanting to be included. That's number one. And then number two is wanting to learn and grow and then contribute. Number three. And then fourth, challenge the status quo. So the first one then that we're talking about is we're talking about having safety. We're talking about having inclusion safety. So there are different types of safety based on those four areas, right? So the inclusion safety, how can we create inclusion safety for others around? So somebody joins your team, they join the marketing team, for example. They're included because they're a team member, but are they socially and emotionally included? And what can you as a leader and the rest of your folks as a team do to ensure that this individual has inclusion safety, that emotionally and culturally they feel part of that team?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we did during the pandemic is have a coffee welcome for a new team member
Mm-hmm.
where we all go around and introduce ourselves, and they talk a little bit about themselves, and it's kind of like our informal meet so and so. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I've found to be the most effective with this is simply including people in a conversation or an email or a project that they should be looped in on.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
sharing
Yes.
information.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just FYI,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
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 And that's what I learned, especially when we hired a new manager, and I just left her off of something because I forgot. I forgot she was there and she was new, and she found out from somebody else, and she's like, "Why didn't you include me on this?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. It was just habit." But
Mhm.
all she wanted was to be
She wanted to
CC.
be, yes, yeah, because that's meaningful. When we're included, we're part of the tribe. It does something to us to make us feel good. So we're part of the tribe, we're part of the family, we want to contribute. The mission seems like it's a common mission. So that inclusion then becomes critical for us. And then the second one is around, we talked about we want to learn and grow. So it's learner safety. Um, do we feel safe to inquire, to ask questions, to experiment, to make mistakes, right? We are going to make mistakes, right?
Yeah,
Right? There are team members who might be hesitant to ask that, are mistakes okay? Is this a team where we can try things out? And if we try things out and we mess up, we fall flat on the behind. What are the consequences of that?
yeah. And how do you respond? Not
Mm-hmm.
just saying, "This is a safe place to make mistakes."
Yeah,
I've
because
heard
it's the
that
right thing to say.
over and over, but then when a mistake is made, how do we respond in that moment?
Right, right. Because that's response that's going to let people know if it's a safe place to make mistakes or not. If the mistake is seen as a demonstration of the inadequacy or the incompetence of this person, whoa, that's a problem. If the mistake is seen, though, as this is an important data point for us to explore and discover something about the team and why this happened and how this happened, what can we leverage from this mistake to move forward. To me, it's one of the ways to actually build resilience in your team.
Yeah,
Fall flat, examine why you fall, how you fell, how not to do that next time, and how to be better as a result of examining that fall,
yeah,
right? Yeah. So it's the learner safety. And then the third thing is we want to contribute. So we have to figure out how to develop and create and enhance contributor safety. What does that look like? We're all expected to perform certain type of responsibility. We have our job description, right? And we should all know what our role entails, what our work, who our work impacts, and what it should look like. And as we do more and more, we show more competence and we up level or upskill ourselves. There should be recognition for that. Sometimes team members struggle because their input is not recognized.
yeah.
Not only is it not recognized, it's not applauded, it's not rewarded. It's, well, this is your job. You're supposed to do your job anyway, right?
Or, something I found too is it has to go through the proper channels to be
Yes.
recognized. Oh,
Yes.
well, it has to come from you
Yes.
to your manager, to your
Yeah.
director, to the leadership team.
Yeah.
And in that, it gets completely lost or it doesn't
Yeah.
even get communicated at all. And what I've really worked hard to do is just build a flyover ramp for all those
Yes.
and just
Yes.
loop my leadership team in
Yes.
with the individual straight there.
Mhm.
This happened, this was awesome, here's where we're at.
Mhm.
Because that can sometimes really bottleneck
Oh,
recognition.
yeah. And individual team members will need different amounts of that type of recognition, right? For some people, they need that. For others, it's like, but as a team leader, assessing all your team members and understanding what motivates them, what pushes them to do more, to do better, to keep going, and then using that information to help you figure out how much emphasis you need to place on that. And then the last one is the status quo. So that's the challenger safety. How safe do your people feel to challenge what's going on, right? And to challenge it without repercussion, without reprisals, without it damaging their position on the team or in the organization. Because if they don't feel that safety, they're not going to do that. And then the team then loses out because that thing that a team member may need to challenge might be the very thing the team needs to focus on in order to meet their goals. But that person is the only person based on their experience, their background, their whatever personality, they might be the only one able to see that thing at that time.
Yeah.
And so, what value is lost or undermined when folks don't have challenger safety? So, I say those four areas help us to at least do a quick scan to see how am I as a leader doing in all these four areas for my people, their inclusion, their learning, their learner safety inclusion, their contribution, and then the status quo safety.
Yeah, I think that's our call to action this time. Look at those four areas
Mhm.
and write it down, see where it's at. And I plan on surveying my team because I'm curious,
Mhm.
what's the vibe here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you're inviting engagement. You're saying I
Hmm.
need to check in with my folks, and once you create that space for them to engage, open it up by asking the type of questions that will disarm them, that will make them feel comfortable. Sometimes leaders might even demonstrate a certain amount of vulnerability themselves
Hmm.
by something that they're struggling with or one of their own challenges around psychological safety. Like, I'm struggling with this right now, and this is the impact it's having on me. That opens up the space for others to say, Mandy was really truly vulnerable. I appreciate that. I was perhaps even surprised that she did that. But now it makes me feel that it's important that I share how I'm feeling or what I'm sensing or what I'm aware of, right?
Yeah.
So it's the inviting that engagement and then, respond to them in a productive way when they start sharing. So it might be simply something like, thank you for that. I wasn't aware that that was an experience that others are having or that you're having. Thank you for sharing that. Now, what do we do with that information? What do
Yeah.
we as a team do with that? Because while it's your responsibility as the team leader to manage the climatic conditions of the team, it is not your sole responsibility for creating the climatic conditions. The team creates that together. And so that's what you'll be doing with your team as you do the assessment, you get the feedback, you and the team review the feedback and say, so this is what we have. How will we use this gold? Because that's what feedback is to me. How will we use this gold that's been given to us now to enhance our sense of well-being, how safe we feel on this team, so that we can learn and grow and feel included and be more productive? How are we going to use this?
Yeah. Well, this has been great. Definitely something I needed to hear. And I hope everyone listening got a little bit of gold out of this as well, because this is where I feel like this is where the money is. And I mean money, and like this is where the riches are in an
Yeah.
organization is those relationships and how we work together.
Yes. Yeah. I always say, Mandy, that you know, a leaders, at least the leaders that I work with, I challenge and invite them to focus on creating this balance between driving for results, and caring for their people. And psychological safety is wrapped up in the whole concept of caring for your people. The more psychologically safe your people feel, the more cared for they feel, the more they feel like they're growing and their well-being is improving, and therefore they can be more productive so you can drive for the results that you desire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you,
Thanks,
everyone
Mandy.
listening. So good to talk to you, Lisa. It was
Oh,
as usual. And thank you all. You know, you can find us wherever you listen to your podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and hit the subscribe button so you never miss a new episode. We will talk to you next time.
bye, everybody. Talk to you next time.